Hello and welcome to the program. The topic for today is one that you've heard a lot about, and that is pension reform. Reforming the state's pension systems for state employees and also school district employees as well. And joining me to discuss that is someone who's worked on it for quite some time now, State Representative Warren Kampf. Welcome.
Good morning, Lori.
We do have a pension problem here in the state of Pennsylvania, not unlike other states in the country. Can you define that problem for folks who are watching?
Sure, and I just want to acknowledge anybody who's watching this video has logged on to my website and the pension reform page. So they care about this, and I just want to thank them and you for caring because it's such a big deal. So here's the issue. So we have an unfunded liability, I think most people know, that now totals $53 billion. More significantly is what we as taxpayers have to pay over the next 30 years to properly fund our public employee pensions. And that number, assuming that we earn 7.5% in the stock market on the money that we put in, is $190 billion. So I did the math on that, and for every working Pennsylvanian, which is more than 6 million people, that is an obligation of $30,000 per person. So it's like a sort of a home equity loan or a student loan, but only for this particular debt for our public pensions. Looked at it another way, right? Or taking a look at it another way, currently, if you have a public employee with a $50,000 salary, the taxpayer is paying that, but is also paying an amount equal to 25% of that each year to fund that person's pension because of the massive hole we're in. And what is 25% of $50,000? It's about $16,000 per year for each public employee. It's a huge problem. And I think, honestly, when you look at how underfunded we are and how much money as taxpayers we're going to have to put in over the next 30 years, the question comes up right away in my mind, what should we do to change this system?
And there has to be another way. What is your plan, your reform plan, for changing this system going forward?
It's very simple. It's a defined contribution plan or a 401k plan, 401k-like plan for new hires. New hires at the school district level and new hires at the state level. The employer, the taxpayer, puts in 4%, which is very competitive out in the private sector, and the employee would put in 6.5%, which is about what state and school district employees are putting in today. So it's a totally fair plan. Nice thing about defined contribution plans is they're portable. Essentially, you can take them with you when you leave. And we learned the other day that the average state employee in America, we had a hearing on pension reform here in the Capitol, is about 7 years in public sector employment. So it makes sense for employees to actually have a portable plan. The whole idea behind it, though, Lori, we want to create a good benefit for our public employees, but the whole idea behind it is with a defined contribution plan, with a 401k plan, you never have an unfunded liability. You are never relying on the stock market. You are never relying on the employer to put in what the bill says this year. And right now we are getting hammered at the school district and state level budgeting. We have such a hard time figuring out how to go from here to there. People are talking about tax increases. Our bond rating is going down, which is basically the credit worthiness of the state. It has been downgraded, I think, 5 times in the last couple of years. People are talking about cuts, right, to services. It's all because, or at least largely, because of this problem. So a system of retirement which would allow us to not have an unfunded liability and not face a crisis year in and year out like we are right now is one I think people are ready for.
I'm guessing if the solution had been very easy, it would have been done already. So I imagine there are some criticisms that opponents of your plan would have. What would those criticisms be?
So there are really two. One is, so currently they say the cost for the employer of each new year in the pension plan is only about 3.5% or 4.5% of payroll. So if we're going to be putting in a 401k plan 4% in, what's the difference? The problem is that cost for a pension plan is really just a theoretical number. It's theoretical. Right now, the taxpayer is putting in, as I said earlier, 25% of payroll. And we're going to go up to 30%, and we're going to be there for something like 30 years. So the theoretical cost is, I think, irrelevant and ridiculous. With a defined contribution plan, a 4% contribution is always a 4% contribution. So that's number one. Number two is there's this idea out there, generally propounded by the actuaries and some experts who are really in it to protect pension plans, I think. The idea that if you close a plan down, you will have these massive transition costs. Okay. So here's the story. Whenever I ask anybody who says this, show me an example out in the real world where a pension was closed, and we know almost all the private sector pensions were closed. People are now in 401k or that type of plan. Show me an example where there actually were massive transition costs, and no one ever can. Okay. There was an actuary who took a look at my plan a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, did all of the analysis, and said there will not be for at least 30 years. He did a full 30-year projection, transition costs. And keep in mind, under our current law, under Act 120, which was back in 2010, no matter what change we make, let's say we don't make any, we have to put in $190 billion. So there is going to be plenty of taxpayer money available to pay benefits and to make it solvent, because we have to do that as a state. But fundamentally, those are the two things. And on the cost and then on the transition cost, really, if you look at it, there is no additional cost to doing it, and it's the right thing to do so we never get into this mess again.
Sounds great. And there's a website that you wanted to mention that kind of shows some of these myths as well?
Yeah, so it's www.repkampf.com/pensionreform.aspx, and I think it'll be on the screen for people.
It sure will. Well, thank you so much for providing the information, the background, and outlining your plan for us, and we look forward to things going forward, working on this issue in the State House and the Senate.
Me too. Thanks, Lori.
Sure. And if you have any questions about pension reform, again, visit Representative Kampf's website, and you can get information there about other ways to contact him by phone or through his district office. Thanks for watching.